Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room, your home for Detroit sports news and information. Now, here's Jim.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room. And in the room today, we have the founder of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network and the managing editor of Sports Illustrated All Lions Team Channel, John Maakaron. How you doing today, sir?
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. And it's like we're just sitting around, a couple buddies in the room and stuff like that, talking some Lions, talking about how you got where you are today. What inspired you to do what you do right now and cover the Lions?
Absolutely. You know, like many young people, I was a fan of sports radio. And around 1994, 95, I would have been around 15 years old. And I've always been a fan of Detroit sports, going back to the days when I was a young person. So when, listening to sports radio, it was unbelievable, the energy, the passion that the host would bring. And I always found myself gravitating toward the likes of Art Regner and Greg Henson and Jamie Samuelson. And obviously, if you were a youngster then and you were passionate about sports, you tuned into Art Regner's postgame when the Lions would lose. And sometimes, not going to lie, I would root sometimes for a loss because Art would literally just scream and rant and yell. And as an impressionable teenager, if you don't like what I'm doing now, blame Art Regner, because he planted the seed for me to develop a passion for sports radio, for analyzing the games and things like that. So I've always been a fan, a real big fan of sports radio. And then when the opportunity came to podcast, I just jumped on it because it was an opportunity to do your own thing. And the entire medium of podcasting just has grown so much in the past, 15 years. And for me to be a part of it, I just had to, because I love sports radio. I love Detroit sports. And to be able to start a podcast network and grow it and become involved with the Lions has been unbelievable. And I'm just somebody that took an interest and said, I want to make some really strong goals. And here I am. I'm covering the Lions, and it's a fascinating look at my story and just how somebody that started off just as a teenager listening to sports radio is now in the media here in Detroit sports.
That's amazing. It come from fan to enjoying the rants and the someone going off at the end of a game. I love that. And then you're the one going off now. No, I'm kidding. You know what I mean? Seriously, it's really a tough road in Detroit right now. Our Pistons aren't good. Our Red Wings aren't good. Our Lions aren't good. The Tigers really suck too. So it's kind of a thing where it's like, do we have any hope? Which team do you think is going to be that hope in Detroit? The next team to win a championship, maybe. I don't know you know that, but I'll just say, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like your optimism here early this morning. It's good. Because, as everyone knows, a lot of the franchises are in rebuilds. Look, so right away you exclude the Lions. You just have to, because literally, I put that in the category of fantasy land and call it a dream. If that ever happens, you'd have to pinch me to wake up to say, oh my God, that really happened. So you look at the other three, and obviously, the Tigers and the Red Wings are in the midst of a rebuild. The Red Wings started a little bit later, and the Tigers around the same time, and they've finally decided that, okay, a certain era of success has ended, and now it's time to rebuild. But in my mind, I think the fans of Detroit probably have the most trust in Steve Yzerman. So I think that the Red Wings probably will be closer to getting back regularly to the postseason as opposed to the other two. I don't have too much hope for the Pistons and the Tigers. You got to be a little bit more patient to see if some of these arms are going to deliver, especially when you look at Al Avila and you look at some of the moves that he's made. There's definitely room for critique, where in my mind, I think that Steve Yzerman has the highest regard among everybody. And I just believe that if there's anybody that's going to bring a team back, it's Steve Yzerman. And right now, I have the utmost faith and confidence that he's going to at least start the process of rebuilding this team the right way and in a manner that's going to lead to hopefully many more Stanley Cups for the Red Wings.
I hope so too. I think Iserman's first pick is Mort Sider, and from watching him in Grand Rapids, he looks like the real deal. He wasn't even expected to go that high. He's getting criticized for it and all this, but that's typical Steve Yzerman in Tampa Bay as well. So I think he is the right man for the job. I think it's a blessing that he went away and he made his own career and did the GM job first before he came back to Detroit. Was successful before he came back here. I think that means a heck of a lot. He's trained very well by Jim Nill and Kenny Holland. So I think he's going to be good. My second favorite's the Pistons because I like the GM. I think that direction's going to change. The Lions are feudal, and the Tigers, I don't know. They've been great before. I think they can get back there. The Lions never have been, and that's our problem. It's covering that team that's difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah, covering the Lions, now for since 2013, I've been involved with the Detroit Sports Podcast. And then around the time, it's interesting in my journey in that, being a media member coming from being a podcaster is really, a fascinating look in that many people would view back then in 2013 a podcast as being non-traditional. Yes. And so I love that aspect of it. And I think part of the reason why I took it to this level was I embraced the hurdles. I loved it when other media would say, well, you're not credentialed. Okay, so I'll just go become credentialed. That's so, right. or they would say, when I would around, 2015, the podcast started really, taking ground and we started getting some big guests. And then, I would say, okay, if we want to be credentialed media, let's start reaching out. And then they would be like, we don't know of any podcasters that cover sports. And I'm like, okay, well, here's what I do. Here's my following. Here's what I can bring to the table. And then they would say, well, you're not really considered traditional media. So then I just would say, okay. I kept knocking on the door. Mm-hmm. And for me, I thought that, something I really wanted to share was the thing that made me the most happiest in this project was there were so many hurdles that were put in front of us that I just love to, I kind of want more. Because the more hurdles that were put in front of me, the more determined I was to get that first nod. And I give credit to Oakland University, Neil Rule, and Scott McDonald. They were among the first that said, all right, come cover us and let's see what you got. And, they gave me a chance. And I'm forever grateful for those that initially took that chance on a podcaster covering sports. And then I started knocking. I went from college to then the Tigers and then the Lions, and I just kept knocking. And I think the best part was the more that they slammed the door in my face, the more determined I was to do this. Yep. And just to be here being interviewed by you is great. And I look at it like this in any situation that you're doing. If you have a vision and a dream and a passion, I think you don't give up. And like I said, I'm just being interviewed by you. I got Sports Illustrated's logo to my right, my logo to, over my shoulder. And I think it comes across that I'm just a guy that loves doing this. I'm here doing this 7 days a week. I don't want to take any days off because it could end at any time. And, in regards to the project, I just love the fact that I'm covering the Detroit Lions daily and I get a chance to kind of see this new regime with Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn and to see it take shape. And with anything, with the Lions involved, it could go really any which way. And that's the fascinating look at this organization because we're all like, on paper, things should be going better than they are. And in 2020, it's the same way. If you look on paper, this team should be good. But at the same time, just based on history, that certain things could happen that could derail a season. And now we have a pandemic added to the fact that we could start the season well and it could end at any time. So that's going to be hanging over the season in that, we all joke around. The Lions could be 6-2 and the season's going to get cut off. It's destined to happen. And I'm just excited to be doing this along the way. And it's an interesting ride.
It is a strange year, but I want to get I want to get your take on, if you're closer to the situation than most, what's your take on Matt Patricia?
Yeah, I think that look, whenever you come in with the pedigree that he had, he's got the ring. He can show it off to everybody. Look at this nice ring that I earned with the New England Patriots. So he's been around it. Okay, so you have to give him the utmost respect for the fact that he's won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. He's been in the room with arguably the greatest NFL head coach, in Mr. Belichick. So when you're around Bill Belichick, you would assume that you pick up things. But here's the issue that I think some of the, assistants have struggled with. When you go to a new organization and a new job, you don't have Bill Belichick. You don't have Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. You're starting with what's already there. And I think that Matt Patricia came in roughshod, a little too aggressive with the whole, look who I am, and this is what I'm going to do. And it turned certain people off that unfortunately derailed that first season, because guess what happens? When you start upsetting some of the players, they're going to start going out and speaking to the media. And right away, they started talking about how late he was to meetings. They started talking about how aggressive he was and how he wore out the players that first go around. But I personally respect that. You come in and you know what you bring to the table. And you're like, I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to upset the apple cart. I want to change everything. The problem that anybody's going to have, anybody that works with the Detroit Lions as a head coach, is they're facing the pressure of 50 years of futility. So right away, all the fans, myself included, we just want success like today, like yesterday. So there's no patience. And unfortunately, nobody that comes here is going to get any patience, because the organization has struggled for 50 years. One playoff win since 57 is unheard of in the history of sports. That's not, something that you're going to see too much. So Matt Patricia's burdened by the fact that this fan base is so hungry for success, and his first 2 years didn't go right. And his second season, he made adjustments and he eased up a little bit, was definitely developed more rapport with the media. And look, the man has a pedigree. The man has an understanding of what he's talking about defensively. The problem is, once you're the man in charge, your job is then to take all that knowledge that you have and teach it to other people who may or may not have any respect for you. And that's the hardest thing. And you're looking now today. We're talking this morning on Monday, and the NFL still doesn't have a lockdown place when training camp is going to open for rookies. Yeah. So leadership at the highest levels, Jim, is really tough. It is tough. And so to build a culture, to get your players in, to turn everything around is a massive undertaking that I don't think anybody could do. But what hurts Matt Patricia is you're a defensive guru, and your defense in 2019 was among the worst of all time. So that doesn't, lend credence to building credibility with the supporters, with the Lions fans. But I think this year will be the year he has to show that, hey, I got my guys. I brought in a plethora of expatriates. I got my general manager that I need here. I'm working closely with him and Bob Quinn to change the culture and to fix things. And when you got Matthew Stafford and a running game and a Kenny Galladay, unfortunately, you don't have too many more excuses that you can throw out there. This is the third year. You got to show what ownership wanted, and that's significant improvement. So in my mind, I enjoy listening to Matt Patricia because he understands football, and he's got, you've got to respect his energy. And when you're around it, it's infectious. You like it. But bottom line for me, I just judge him on wins and losses. Get this team over the hump already by now, and let's move this along, because it didn't take Bill Belichick 5 years, 6 years to turn the New England Patriots around. He was starting to see success at a pretty early clip because of his greatness.
Even in Cleveland. I think he won a Super Bowl his second year in Cleveland.
Jim, you know what I say, which is kind of concerning because, as a longtime Lions supporter, I feel like Matt Patricia has the feel of Bill Belichick when he was in Cleveland. A guy that has an understanding that just needed maybe that second opportunity. And I hope that he doesn't just leave here and then rattle off a bunch of success somewhere else. I don't know if he's going to get the patience here in Detroit, but I don't know. It's just my mind, if things were to go differently back when they moved on from Jim Caldwell, or even when ownership decided to move on from LaWand and Mayhew, you need experience. That's the number one thing that you need. Somebody, Bob Quinn, has been with the New England Patriots, Matt Patricia, but they were never head coaches. They were not the ones that actually did the job and got it done. So that's the one thing that Lions ownership has not done, is brought in people that have vast experience winning the Super Bowl in the position that they're in. And I hope one day that they get the opportunity to do it, because this fan base needs it. at the highest level. But I have a lot of respect for Matt Patricia. I've learned a lot of football from him in just a few short 14 months.
Everybody I've heard from that talks about Matt Patricia, I have this one guy that I had on here. It's called that football history dude, I guess is his name on Twitter, and he had Dick Vermeil on his show, and Dick Vermeil was saying the same thing: give him time, patience. He does know what he's doing, and it's going to take a while, but I think he is the right coach. I have seen people from ESPN and different people that really know football that think that he has a chance. I don't like his defense because it's basically the bend but don't break type of thing, and I hate that defense. But it wasn't super spectacular in New England either. So it's like, but it's all got to work together. We have to have a running game. We have to have Matthew Stafford play action pass, or whomever the quarterback will be. I'm sure we can talk about that later, but you know what I mean, though. But it has to be, we have to be able to run the ball in 4-minute situations. We have to be able to throw the ball to get the first down. We have to keep the defense off the field to keep them, He missed key pieces in that defense last year. Deshaun Hand is a key piece. They're just a bunch of people, and Snacks wasn't half of what he was. Trey Flowers returning from injury. So I think it was kind of Tracy Walker missed time. Darius Slay missed time. There's just a lot of things that went wrong last year health-wise that I think we could have been a lot better. We were in the lead in 14 games.
Absolutely.
And Stafford.
Yeah, and one thing that's fascinating, too, is in the last couple years, the Lions have moved on from some veterans in the season in Golden Tate and Quandre Diggs. Yes. And it lends to the argument that some will say, well, maybe it was a rebuild, or maybe that they are, trying to clean out those that they don't feel buy in. But at the same time, if they've got the trust of ownership and they feel like they got time, then you can make those moves. But, they might have been willing to sacrifice some short-term wins for the better good of the team long-term. But when you remove Golden Tate, remove Quandre Diggs on a secondary that was struggling, it was, an interesting move to say the least, because it highly upset your best player in Darius Slay, and it resulted in him obviously moving on. So it's a fascinating look, because when Matt Patricia was brought on, it wasn't sold as a rebuild. It was sold that, hey, 9 wins is not good enough. And I think Bob Quinn regrets saying that, because
New England works this way too, though.
Exactly.
They get rid of their star players before they need to get rid of them.
Exactly.
So this has been a thing in New England for quite a while, but in Detroit we're not used to it.
Yeah, no, and I don't think that the players were used to somebody that was just probably came in so aggressive after Jim Caldwell. You got to remember, Jim Caldwell was a players coach.
Yes, he was.
And they developed a fondness because they won. And you listen to the likes of Glover Quinn, and he says, and he puts out a good argument. He says, look, we were only maybe 5 players away. Why did you go and why did you feel the need to tear it all down? But that's the argument that Bob Quinn was going to make, was he's going to say that I felt that we reached our ceiling with Jim Caldwell, and now we might be willing to take a couple steps back to have more consistent playoff success. But
I actually think he was right.
Yeah, and it's a fair argument to make. It's a fair argument to make, but when you only win a handful of games your first 2 seasons, and Jim Caldwell was among the most successful coaches you had, you're going to open yourself up to some strong criticism. And you got, if 9 wins, it wasn't good enough from Jim Caldwell. What does 9 wins in 2 seasons? What does that mean for Matt Patricia? So it's a big year. He's got to start showing at least trending in the positive direction. We need to see some positive trends if Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are going to stay here.
It's an interesting correlation, I think, between Belichick in Cleveland and Patricia here. I think that if we give him enough time, it's possible that he will turn around. But right now, there's a lot of things I don't like about him right now. But clock management is one of them. I don't like his use of timeouts. I don't like the adjustments he's making at halftime. We were the worst. We were terrible in the third quarter. We would come out so flat in the third quarter, and I don't understand that. If you're supposed to be a rocket scientist and you're really good at adjusting things, how come we're worse in the second half than we are in the first half many times? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, also, too, not to make excuses, but the team had a plethora of injuries. When you lose Matthew Stafford, when you're 3-4-1, whatever happens the rest of the way, you kind of get a pass when your starting quarterback goes down. And, yeah, I do think Matt Patricia gets a little bit of credit for what he did early on in the second season. The team was in a lot of games, but you're absolutely right. After a lot of the games, he would tend to discuss the fact that, we can't close, the penalties, the mistakes. Well, eventually, when you keep saying that over the course of 4, 5, 6 weeks, why is it that the team didn't respond and clean up some of those mistakes? You can't keep making the same excuses. And I think the biggest argument that you're going to have, and many will have, is that the team probably didn't get as good and didn't meet anywhere near their potential. And it's just things, it really is true. Football is a game of inches. And when they don't fall your way, that call against that win against Trey Flowers against Green Bay,
terrible,
such a terrible call, and it really derailed their season, and it was a massive momentum shift. Yep. If they could have got that game, I wonder if things would have been different. But every year, I think if you're in the Lions organization, you got to come to expect that something's going to happen, and you got to overcome it. And I think hopefully in the coming years, whoever's here, they can instill the ability to bounce back and overcome dealing with officials or bad plays or things that happen. Because that's what it takes to win in the National Football League, is to overcome the momentum swings and be able to finish. And if it can happen, if if the breaks fall the Lions' way this go around, you might see some victories stack up.
Speaking of the breaks, I have to ask this question because there's a lot of people in the Detroit Lions fandom that believe that everyone's out to get us, that the NFL has set their mind that we're not going to win, and they cheat us all the time. There are some plays you can overcome, but a play where Seattle bats the ball, you can't overcome that. The face mask penalty to Aaron Rodgers. Okay, yeah, you should never let him throw that deep of a Hail Mary, but it was over. The game was over. 0 showed on the scoreboard. The game was over, and the ref said, "Oh, wait a second," to give him a chance. And it just seems like it's not Murphy's Law any longer. It's Lions' Law. What do you think about this whole Detroit versus everybody thing?
I think it's great. I think that you have to kind of find, certain rallying cries, just like I talked, in terms of the hurdles that were put in front of me. You kind of have to sometimes put some of that us against the world mentality out there. And I think it's a great attitude to have. And I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't know if I would have reached these levels of success if there weren't hurdles in front of me, if people didn't say, "Oh, you're a podcaster," or, "Oh, you're not a trained journalist. How can you do all this stuff?" So to hear that stuff, I always tell the guys that I'm working with, I love the hate. I think it's great. Yeah. I think that once you then taste success, now on the Lions side in regards to the NFL, look, it's a talent league. You need more talent. Yeah. And the argument that I think is valid is, the biggest debate that people will have with general manager Bob Quinn is he has a system in place that he wants players to come in and fit. In this day and age, you see the likes of the teams that are successful, and they got talented individuals across the board at key positions. And it seems like the Lions now are still kind of in that culture phase, and we kind of need to kind of shift now to get the premier players on the defensive line, the premier wide receiver, the premier running backs. And I know team building is tough, but I think the biggest complaint that people will have is there's not enough high-end talent. Who are you going to count on? Who are you going to say, okay, absolutely, it's 3rd down and 6, and we got to get off the field. Who are we going to count on to make the play? Sure. You can't answer that right now. It's a wait-and-see approach. In my mind, in terms of building a team, you go out and get the best talent, and you fit your stuff to what they bring to the table. And I think that's not happening at this point. And Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia have to make the case that their players will be able to beat out some talented individuals. Because you got to remember, Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, they're retooling. They're, they were ahead of you, and they're constantly in flux, and you got to catch them. And even the Bears had a better record than you, and they came when you played the Bears. Their offense, was able to do whatever they wanted against your defense. So you can't assume that you're better than anybody in this division. So in my mind, I want talent. I want to see the best of the best on that field. And in a salary cap era, I know it's tougher, but I think there were some free agents the Lions could have targeted that are better than what they got now.
I agree. Jack Conklin is one of them I wanted.
Absolutely.
Right tackle out of Tennessee. We playing for Tennessee, and he's from Michigan, went to Michigan State. It made perfect sense, and they just was like Big V instead, and I'm like, oh boy. Okay. Not that I'm upset with him because I haven't seen him play here yet, but I don't think he's a great pass blocker. I think he's a better run blocker than pass blocker. I think he's better than Ricky Wagner showed here. But still, I mean, that's an upgrade that I would like to have seen. Jeff Okuda over Isaiah Simmons. I don't agree with that pick. I'm sorry. I'll go on here and say it. I think Simmons is a generational talent. And we did need somebody to cover linebackers, although we did get a linebacker out of New England again, Jamie Collins, to do some of that stuff. But still, I mean, there are things when we draft for need, which the Lions have done all the time I've been watching them. I'm 50 years old, so it's like it's been a while. All that time, they've drafted for need. I believe at every single draft I can see, need, and I'm like, you create the holes that you're patching, and you fill it with players that aren't as talented usually, and it doesn't mean you're going to go anywhere. If you solidify a position, you should go and try to solidify another position. Don't just show someone the door and then bring someone else in that isn't as talented. I guess that was my argument with Matthew Stafford. We were on a show together before and we talked about Stafford, and it's like, okay, why do we take him out? And now we've got to replace a quarterback now. Whereas we could be using, all that effort to, get better linebackers. What is Christian Jones doing on this team anyway? No, I'm sorry. I don't really think he's that good. That's just my opinion.
And I think what you're hinting at, and I think that a lot of people have paid attention to, is the Lions always seem to be, as an organization, one step behind the trend of what's winning in the National Football League. Look, right now it's a passing league. And so what are they going to? They're reverting back to wanting to be more balanced and to be more old school. And it can work. But your fan base just saw Patrick Mahomes air it out when he needed to at the proper times. And, yeah, the 49ers had a strong rushing attack, but they ended up losing because they couldn't make the key play on defense. And that's why, for me, I needed the 49ers to win that Super Bowl so bad to show that, hey, defense can win. And when the moment came for the defense of the 49ers to stop the Chiefs, they came up light. And it was like, no. You have Patrick Mahomes now, who's going to be, the big contract that he signed. He's going to be the face of the franchise. And you got the Lions who are kind of going, okay, old school defense and run game, which in 2020 sounds antiquated, but it can produce winning football. But bottom line,
it is if you only have a game manager. But we have somebody that can air it out. We have somebody that can throw it down the field. And I think play action is going to be huge in this offense. I think the run game is more for those situations like, we're going to run it, we're going to cram it down your throat. Oh, wait, your safety's coming up. Sweet.
Exactly. The more options, the better. Yep.
Jones. Yeah. I mean, but balance is better for this team at this point. We've had it where we've aired it out and we're getting killed. Stafford getting sacked 41 times in a season, 10 times in a game.
See, but the idea would be that you would have an offensive line that could be able to block for more than 4. The forever. Yeah, I know it takes. How long does it take to build an offensive line? How many? Exactly. So you look at it and you say, look, football. Recall when they had one of their best seasons. I believe 2014. They had premier players on the offensive line and defensive line, led by Ndamukong Suh. They had a top 5 defense, and they were doing some things. So that team, obviously didn't have success against the Cowboys, and whoever you blame for that loss, that team should have did a lot more, and they should have jumped off from that. But I think that's the challenge is year over year when you lose 30% of your roster and you're not doing the best in terms of replacing it, then it just kind of feels like a new season every year. Whereas the better teams are able to have more continuity because they are able to select players. They don't have players like Tease Tabor and Jared Davis who you select at high positions and they end up not doing what you need them to do. Right. So, and you don't go out and sign Rick Wagners and keep constantly battling and playing from behind to catch up. You're absolutely right. The story of the Lions is really about missed opportunities and, in my mind, I think philosophies that are not progressive. They're reactive in my mind. But I do think that –
taken. I'm sorry, or they're
Yeah.
taken from other teams, like the St. Louis
Yeah.
thing, and bringing in Mark Martz, and then we
Yeah.
went to the New Orleans thing because that used to work before, and all the things that used to work, we bring that in thinking it's going to work now, but the NFL's a today league. What's Detroit's identity? What is our identity? We don't want to be the Patriots. I mean, because obviously we can't be, but you know what I'm saying. The success level, yes, but the team, no. The culture, maybe. I don't know. Is this town like that? I don't know. What is our Detroit Lions identity? That's
Matt
kind
Patricia,
of what I want to see.
Yeah, he said he wants to be a tough-nosed, rugged football team that can adapt and make plays late. And basically, he does want this to look like the New England Patriots, where they make plays late and things like that. But guess what? When you're playing it so close to the vest, and you're playing within a margin of trying to win every game by 3 to 5 points, that opens you up for opportunities that, a ref can do something or a missed opportunity can cost you. There's no law that says you can't go out there and destroy another team by 14 points and above. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to run up the score. But the Lions won't do that. If the Lions get up by 14, Jim, you're going to see them hand the ball off. And in this league,
3 and out.
yeah, exactly. If you don't execute, the other team's going to have just an ample opportunity to come back. So in my mind, I'm definitely all for the LA. See, ideally, you would have, in talking to you, you would have a combination of the Rams offense from a couple years ago that just lit it up, and then last year's 49ers defense right there that can clamp down when needed. And then you have a perfect combination. I know it's hard to execute, but in my mind, why give yourself that such small room for error? Go out there and try and destroy football teams. Go out there and, win games 21-10. It's okay. It's allowed. And you can go out there and sometimes it's allowed. You don't have to play every single game down to the wire, one possession game. I know that's how the league tends to go. But, hey, if you want to make life easier for yourselves and the fan base, just go out there and run it up and do the best you can to put a winning product on that football field. So I can't wait for I can't wait. Training camp is a couple days away, a week away for everybody. So I'm chomping at the bit to evaluate all these matchups and to see what this 2020 version looks like. But in my mind, the tough part about NFL football now is it going to happen? What is the pandemic? How is it going to affect our work? How is it going to affect everything? I want this gone. I don't want this hanging over the head of sports, college sports. I just want to be able to cover sports in a different way, because I can recall now a year ago, I was prepping to go and cover the Lions for the first time. And I remember that feeling of like, wow, here I am to get my name on a credential. It was a good feeling, and to learn the ropes there, because I was new. I didn't have any clue what anybody did at that point. So I got in there and I got to learn, asking questions, learning how protocol is, how fast media, is taken to practice and out of practice, and kind of the workflow that was needed. So this year's going to be totally different, a lot more of like this kind of stuff. But to be honest, Jim, covering sports virtually, while it's not the same as in person, it has some advantages. I get to come here and cover the team and, send out requests and things like that from the comforts of my office. And I feel safe.
Travel.
No travel. No travel. But do you think this team, I think like a lot of people, is around a 7 to 8 win team, maybe max 9?
I have 8
and 8. Yeah, that's about the right.
Yeah. That's what I said. I've stuck to that the whole time, because we've had a few shows where it's like, what do you think the record's going to be? What do you? Yeah, I'm right there.
Yeah.
What
7,
do you
8
see
wins.
yourself? Let's take the pandemic out of this, but
Okay.
So, what do you see yourself in your business and your, what you do 5 years from now?
Absolutely.
What's your goals?
And here's something that's great, and I appreciate you asking that. I always make goals to try and do better. Like when I do a podcast, okay, how can we make it better? That's why I put so much time in editing a podcast, or I put so much time reviewing an article, or looking over topics and looking over what the supporters are liking and not liking, and what the response is on Twitter when we're engaging in conversation. So I've always made goals, and I think that helped us to, try and make new goals. Well, I can share with you, when people put up the hurdles, the fun part, like I said, is, changing people's perceptions. Well, in the coming weeks, I can share with you, and your audience will be among the first to hear it.
Wow.
The work that I'm doing at SI All Lions is now going to also be partnered with the Oakland Press.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's a big announcement.
Yes. So it's going to be announced, and I'll share it, like I said, with you because you invited me and things like that.
you.
Now, we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but hopefully you'll start to see that content. And so for me, I can share with you, I have a great crew of people. I work with Vito Churko, Logan Lamorandier, Adam Strozinski. I work with a ton of people that I have a lot of respect for that are just way better than me at everything. So a guy like Vito was a hard worker at the Free Press, okay? And I can share this with you too, is that I always like seeing the success of others way more than me because I've experienced it, and I like seeing that success. And I always felt, I don't know if I've ever told Vito this, I always felt like Vito should be working at the Free Press. He was there, but he was doing high school coverage, the blogs and stuff like that. And I said, this guy's really good. He can write. He's got talent. He's got the ability to be a regular sports writer. So I'm like, okay, I think this guy can write. This guy can do some things, and he has an asset that I find valuable. So in my mind, I was more offended than he was that he wasn't writing regularly or employed at the Free Press. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, I got this project at Sports Illustrated All Lines. They want daily content. Vito, get to work, start writing. And I had the opportunity to grow an audience. And, I've always wanted to take things to just bigger and better levels with the podcast, with the work I'm doing. I just want to put it in more places so more people can see it. That's been my philosophy from day one. And so the funny part is now seeing my work and my team's work potentially in a newspaper, if it happens and it all works out, it will be a great accomplishment because, most people might consider my work a blog, or they might consider it whatever they label it. But to have somebody take a month and listen to your podcast and read your work and go, oh, it's okay, it's done well. People like it, and it looks presentable. To have somebody validate you is all I need. Everybody needs a little bit of validation. In terms of people saying, hey, your work is good. We appreciate what you're doing. We want to work with you. So the partnerships have been great. So to be honest with you, Jim, I'm trying today to make my next goal, because what else is there for me to do? I mean, I've kind of, I've done it. Now I think the new opportunity to just keep, I report on the lines daily, Monday through Sunday, my job. Yeah, every single day. And to share with you, I've written a blog or an article, researched article every single day this year. I have not taken a day off where I've not written something.
Because we read them.
Yes, yeah, every day. Not one day off this year. I've not taken a day off. And so if you want something, you just go for it. So where I see this in 5 years, I don't know. I could be just, tomorrow could be the end of everything and I just podcast. The one thing you'll know from me, though, you'll always hear me podcasting. That's a passion of mine. Mm-hmm. I love the medium. It's a medium that's totally, freeing. It's like this. You and I are having a conversation. We can say and do whatever. So for me, you'll always see me podcasting with the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm hoping, to see continued growth with Sports Illustrated All Lions. I just want to keep getting better at what I do, keep growing an audience, keep people happy with me, keep getting better myself. And also, like I said, when I see Vito's byline, it'll bring me the most joy. And actually, to be honest, it'll bring me more. I'll be happier than Vito will be, because Vito is a podcaster, broadcaster, but he's a damn good writer, and he deserved an outlet. So I put him there, and he doesn't even probably want to be there. You know what I mean? But he's good at it. He knows it. He knows he's doing it because I'm pushing him, and he's good at what he does. And he deserved at least to have a regular spot in a newspaper and in a bigger platform. So and like Logan Lamorandier, somebody you'll get to know who's super passionate.
He's on later. He's on tonight, actually.
Super passionate. This is somebody that needed to be highlighted. So I needed to just find people to highlight. And, Adam Strozinski is a great sports broadcaster, challenges me all the time, and brings out a side of my skills that I want brought out. So in 5 years, I just want to keep being in the mix. If you see me on Twitter, I've been tweeting constantly about Detroit sports since 2013. I'm doing it daily. I just want, to be honest, Jim, probably my biggest goal would be to have more people respect what I do. I know people like it, but I want respect. I'm going to command respect. Now, maybe some of the things I've done and said might not, lead to that. But you know what? I know people know that the guy that's talking now is passionate, it's hardworking, and it's a learning process. I'm not a trained journalist. I'm somebody that loves sports to the degree that I could cover it and talk about it and analyze it and explore it and broadcast it, and that's what I brought to the table. Now, if I bring along the skills that everybody else has, look out. There's going to be no stopping me, because you're not going to find anybody that's going to work harder than me. That's not going to happen. Right. So in 5 years, I would like a little bit more respect. I would like the opportunity to maybe have more podcasts. I have 12 now on the network, maybe have 20, 25. Wow. We have 12 shows weekly, and they're consistent. They're good. They're heavily listened to. And I mean, like I said, that's the thing I'm struggling with is I'm actually, for the first time in 7 years, I'm content. I'm happy.
Wow,
and
that's good.
If I did this for the next 5 years, I'd be happy. But I'm still going to find those goals to try and do better, to try and compete. You
got to keep that fire burning, man.
I'm going to say this.
What it is.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of guy that is similar in a way to Michael Jordan. Did you watch The Last Dance in its start to finish, right? Okay. You saw how he actually made up things to get pissed off at.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm kind of the same way in that I say, you know what? Jim has this great interview show, and he's talking to Logan and Jeremy Reisman before me. Why? Why don't he call me first? And so, you know what I mean? I say those things to myself and say, okay, you know what?
Good.
Yeah, that means I'm not known enough. I'm not out there enough. I'm not putting.
Or it means I'm just intimidated. No, I'm kidding. I really don't.
Yeah, right. So that's what and look, your interviews have been great. I like the one with Jeremy, and also too, it was enlightening the interview you did with Jeremy Reisman, because he spoke on being somebody that was trained in psychology. Well, that's what I'm. That's my other passion.
Wow.
I'm a licensed psychologist. I am a psychologist.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was my educational background.
And he also got credentialed for his website as well. So it's like you guys have a parallel kind of a thing going.
That's why when I listened to that interview, I'm like, that's the secret to covering the Lions. To be able to withstand the trauma, you got to have a psychology degree.
I was asking him if he analyzed himself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
about being a Lions fan.
So
that's hilarious.
It's a great mix. It's a great opportunity to cover sports and then help people in a different light as a mental health professional. And it's equally as time consuming, but it's a very rewarding thing. And it's a great balance. Competitiveness in sports, helping people and letting their stuff and things that they need, putting your efforts there as well, makes for a rewarding work life. So I'm very happy in that front. Like I said, I'm still in the planning phase of goals now for the next phase, but I'm now, like I said, I wasn't the guy that sat there and said, oh, look, I made it. But finally, after 7 years, when last year they called and I signed the deal with Sports Illustrated and Maven Sports, I just said, I feel good. I did something. I did something
pretty sweet.
I did something to be proud of, and I'm just going to keep doing it to the best of my ability. And for those that like it, that's great. But those that don't, I like it even better.
So you've had your fair share of trolls then, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, the whole experience getting to Sports Illustrated is a little complicated, too, in that, people always, when something new comes in or something is, Sports Illustrated wasn't covering teams locally. Right. So once this new guy comes in who's like, who is this loudmouth idiot that's coming in trying to cover sports? And I just came in full bore, ready to do it. But like I said, you're going to have your fair share of critics who might not be happy with what you're doing, or you're not. And Jim, I think the thing that is a little different about me is I'm not part of the establishment. So I don't have any filter. I never had any filter. My philosophy to start the podcast was, if it entered my brain, I just said it out my mouth.
Right. Exactly.
And I tweeted it. And now that has to be adjusted slightly, but I'm still the same way in that if I want to write about it, I write about it, irregardless of who likes it or who doesn't. And I've always been that way. Probably in self-reflection, could tone that down a little bit. But in my mind, it's been successful. People like it because they know the guy that's doing it is authentic. He's trying to be as fair and balanced as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing personally for me that I kind of disagree with in journalism is emotion. And I know I don't know exactly all the rules of journalism and things like that, but in my mind, sports is emotional. Sports is reactionary. Mm-hmm. And when you tap into it, it produces great content. And that's all I'm trying to do is in the moment, react live, passionately, energetically, to be objective and to be stand back and not be emotional. That's not me. And so I'm just going with that and seeing where that takes me. Does that cause me some problems sometimes? Sometimes a little bit, but I'm me and I own it and I accept it and I love it because it produces content that people relate to. And I think that they see that, okay, God, this guy's got something going on. And he's always asking questions, trying to debate both sides, trying to, get to the next debate and think about what's important. So in the world of sports. And I just think that makes it fun for me because I think I would have, if I was a traditional straight-laced journalist, I'd get bored pretty quickly and I would have moved on. The emotion, maybe for some might wear them out. I get fueled by it. The more we talk, the more energized I get.
Yeah, same here. But the thing is, you got to be yourself, man. You can't sit here and put out stuff that ain't you. So toning it down and stuff. And I know because of the affiliations and stuff like that, you have to kind of watch what you say a little bit more. But I mean, you still got at the base, you still got to be yourself, and you still got to have
be myself.
And
so far, so good.
I think that's more contagious than it is anything else.
Exactly.
I mean, there's morons. I mean, there's people out there that aren't like it.
Right.
But you know what? We can't please everybody, right?
but Jim, I think the best part is that those that actually spend the time to get to know me, they know what I'm about. And that's what I want. I want the true me to be talked about, not a perception of me. So I think the blessing is those that have been willing to talk to me, to get to know me, they know what I'm about. They know what is at my core. And that's what I want, is I don't want people to have, it's hard because you don't want people to have a misperception of what you're about based on what people think or assumptions, but it's hard. I understand that. And that's kind of my battle, is that I want people to respect what I do. I want, public credit. I want to be acknowledged, but it's normal. But yeah, it's very normal. And then at the same time, just making sure that I feel that the work is the best that it can be. And I love doing this, man. I got lucky to do this, and it really is a fun opportunity to talk sports and tell the story. And the one thing that when people ask, well, how did you do this? If you want to be in the sports media business, just put it out there and say you want to be in the sports media business, and then find your avenue. I'm a living example of that, is that you don't have to take a traditional approach. You can take a non-traditional approach and meet some very high goals. And as long as you just make goals, work hard, and the hurdles, I'll share this. On the podcast, I was inspired, obviously, by Adam Carolla, who was one of the best podcasters, who took the genre from where it was and advanced it. Well, the first attempt I made to get him on the show, he denied. He said, I can't, and he had his people deny the request. Okay, I was like, bummed out, because somebody I viewed as an idol, somebody I had a lot of respect for. 365 days later, a year later, he was coming into town and he was doing a show, and I reached out again and he came on.
Oh, cool.
Yes, he came on. And so that was kind of a great moment for me, in that it showed that, hey, you're going to face disappointment. You're going to have something that you really want not happen. But if you wait for that opportunity, you go back to the drawing board, you try again. And when that moment comes, there was no happier guy doing an interview than me interviewing Adam Carolla the first time he came on my podcast. And I'll never forget it. And it just kept me moving forward. And like I said, the success will come when you're just willing to kick the door down whenever there's a hurdle that is in your way. And there's been a lot of hurdles for us, but we've kicked them all down. And
nice.
And now, Jim, the hurdles are less, and I'm so happy. The hurdles are a little bit less, but they're still there. I still get ignored. I still get ignored on certain things. You get left out of certain things. You get perceived a certain way. But at the end of the day, the more hurdles, the more success is going to come my way. I know it.
And the more you stick to it and believe in yourself and do what you want to do, the more those people will change their mind as they see what you're putting out there and what you're doing and things like that. It's like 365 days. You had to continue to work before he came back on your show. And the thing is, maybe he saw that. Maybe he saw that stick-to-itiveness and you know, that you're still around after a whole year, because that doesn't happen in the podcast world a lot.
Or still willing to ask. Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep asking, keep trying. And I think that what you're doing is great. Listen, obviously, if you love broadcasting, you must be podcasting. Do it. It's easy. It's just, it's so the information is accessible. You can find a way to turn on a computer, plug in a microphone.
We had a podcast for a while. We do YouTube mostly now, but we did pretty good. We had, for a small show, we had 6,000 views a week, so that was pretty good.
There you go. Yeah. So you want to be able to just do it. It's such a fun platform. Try it. You know, it's an amazing opportunity to be creative and to get your outlet out there. I grew it from nothing. I literally, like I think I've told on the roundtable, I started the podcast in my basement. The basement of my house, and we just did it weekly, and we set goals to do it good and weekly consistently, and we just built up, and here we are with logos and affiliations and partnerships, and it's a fun ride. And
it is where I want to be at some point.
Yeah, and so Jim, let me tell you, when I started in 2013, there were maybe 5 regular sports podcasts, and now in 2020, there's probably thousands of Detroit Lions podcasts and Wings podcasts. So I know I'm a small part of that equation, but I know that my little part helped spawn this this podcast game, and I can't advocate for it enough. The podcast game is amazing. It has liberty. You're free to do whatever you want. Why not do that? It's a liberating experience, and when you have interviews like this, or you have opportunities to collaborate, it is an amazing opportunity. Don't discount it. It's there. It's right there. It's right within your grasp. Don't miss out. Get in the game. Trust me, the water's fine. We don't judge too harshly. Get in and try it. If you really love this and you want to broadcast and you want to get your voice out, or you want to have great conversations, do a podcast. It's really fun. Really, it's fun. It's not work. It is, isn't it?
It's a blast. Especially if you have somebody, a partner that knows what they're talking about with sports and stuff like that. You can
to bounce ideas off of.
Go, man. It's so much fun. Especially after a loss. No, I'm just kidding.
You're right.
Or after a flag, you know. Those are so much. We had some really good ones when we were doing it before. But yeah, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you coming on. Anything you want to tell anybody before we wrap this up? Anything that's from your heart, man?
Absolutely. If you're a fan of podcasts locally, if you're out of town and you come across this interview, all you got to do is go to your favorite place that you listen to podcasts, type in Detroit Sports Podcast. Our content's daily. The show that I do with Adam that has run now 363 weeks consecutively in 6 years, Doc and Jock every Thursday. And then if you're a hardcore, diehard Lions fan, great coverage is available at Sports Illustrated, all Lions. Sports Illustrated invested in those that were hardworking, and I can't thank them enough, because even though, you know, you hear things and you read things about certain things, what they did for me was provide me training, equipment. They for the last year, they have taken my skill set and advanced it. They invested in me. And so for that, I'm forever grateful. And if it ends tomorrow, hey, I got the opportunity of a lifetime. I lived my dream. I got to cover sports as a local podcaster with a great affiliated company like Sports Illustrated and Maven Sports. So I wanted to share that positive side in their investment in me and what they've done and the great relationships I've built with that company. And you don't hear about you hear about a lot of negative things all the time, but the positive thing is they've taken, if it ends, they've invested in my podcast that it can spawn off for a long time. Their investment that they put into the podcast, into me, the equipment that they've been willing to, you know, work with me and share insider stuff that helps. So for me, that knowledge that they gave me, that they were willing to see, okay, this guy works hard, let's invest in him, is invaluable. I'll never forget that. And I never forget those that stuck with me. Like I said, I want to personally thank Adam Strozinski, Vito Churko, Logan Lamorandier. I wasn't the easiest to work with, but I think they knew it was in pursuit of greatness and in pursuit of trying to put out the best. And I wasn't the nicest guy all the time, but I know deep down they stuck with me because they know that if they do, I'm gonna put them over. That's my thing, is that I'm gonna get them to a better spot than where they are now. They're gonna gain experience. They're gonna interview people that they've always wanted to, or they'll get featured in a way that they deserve to. So in my mind, I sit here proud to do this every single day, covering sports. It's an amazing endeavor. Detroit Sports Podcast, Sports Illustrated, All Lions. I feel like I'm in the mix. I can't wait to see how your interview plays out with Logan, because he really, the fascinating part was I would have debates with Logan. I would have debates with the likes of Pride of Detroit years ago. And now to see me in the mix with him, Logan, I can't speak highly enough about. He's passionate, fact-based individual that is really strong in his knowledge of the Lions and facts and putting together information properly. Yep. Vito is the hardest working individual, very patient, is a saint, and he's a guy that's community-based, that cares about others. Adam Strozinski, hard-nosed, hard individual, but very, at his core, is a hard-working individual who, if he put up with me, he's broadcast with me, a guy with a maybe sometimes bigger ego than I deserve to have. He put up with me for 6 years, going on 7 years. Wow. Me wilding out and him going, what is this guy talking about? Making one argument one week and then another argument the next week. And he stuck with it, and he saw what I saw when we co-founded this. And I'm just grateful that he wants to do 3-4 podcasts with me. And we talk sports. We do wrestling. We do everything.
I was wondering about the wrestling. I was going to ask you about that because you said putting people over, and then you mentioned some other things. And I'm like, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I was just
a huge wrestling. What we did was we used to include wrestling in the Doc and Jock podcast. It got so expansive that we were doing 2.5 hour broadcasts. So we just broke it up. We just broke it apart and branched off, where Thursday is Doc and Jock Detroit Sports. Friday is Doc and Jock Wrestling, where we break. Oh yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Oh my gosh, dude!
Huge,
huge. We've got to talk later at some point. So.
Absolutely. So those guys were great. They were they're good guys, man, and they deserve. Make sure you follow everybody on Twitter. The main Twitter site is Detroit Podcast. Number one thing I'll share on that: get in the mix. We read everything. If you like us, if you don't like us, I love to interact with the fans of Detroit, the supporters of our project, the people that don't like what I say. Get in there. If it's good, I'll retweet it, and it'll go out to the masses. Don't hesitate. I read everything. I don't get offended too easily. Some of the things I've said have been way out there, and just get in the mix. Get in if you want to get in the mix in Detroit sports and you want to be part of the action. Message us at Detroit Podcast. We'll have fun conversations. We'll get your stuff over. We'll help launch you, because we had a lot of help along the way, and I'm willing to do that for anybody that wants to help. And I'll say this with Vito to end. How Vito got his opportunity, he just direct messaged me and said, I want an opportunity. That's all he did. Wow. All he did was he was the first person that created his job. He said, I want a podcast with you. And I said, okay, you'll podcast with us. And that was that. Sweet. It was just that easy. And look where he's come. And he's a big part of the site. I don't get to tell him enough, and I don't want to tell him enough because I want him to keep working hard. But he's the biggest reason Sports Illustrated All Lions has survived a year, and now is going to take the next step. So look out for us. We're making noise. We're making a lot of noise, and we like it. We're having fun with it. And I hope that if you've taken anything away, that you feel you can message me anytime. I'll answer any questions. I'll help in any way I can, because I'm appreciative of where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going. So this was fun. We've got to do this again. I need a part 2. I need like a 3-hour.
We're going to give you a part 2 for sure, man.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
That's right.
We'll do something on wrestling, man.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time. Thank you so much for reaching out.
You're
I want to come on again, hopefully.
Sounds great. I had a great time. I had a blast. Everybody hit the subscribe button and like this video. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. We'll get back to you. We'll comment on what you say. Sometimes it might not be great, but we will comment on what you say. Oh, it's been a great show, John. Appreciate you being here. And to everyone else, we're out.